Scarlett, a landman, had been engaged to Prince Kyle since before either of them was even born, all because of an agreement made between their families. However, that long-standing arrangement is abruptly shattered during an extravagant ballroom event when Kyle publicly announces that he is breaking off the engagement. He claims that he has grown sick of Scarlett and now wishes to be with his mistress, Taranza, leaving Scarlett utterly stunned by this act of betrayal. The guests at the party begin applauding Kyle and Taranza as he boldly declares that he intends to marry her in the near future. Scarlett cannot comprehend how everyone could support such a despicable man who just cast aside his fiancée so heartlessly. Before long, though, she discovers the reason for their reaction. Kyle begins praising Taran, saying she is gentle and intelligent, while dismissing Scarlett as someone completely devoid of emotion. He claims that pretending to be happily engaged to Scarlett for the past 17 years has been the greatest humiliation of his life, and that he feels relieved to finally be free from her. Scarlett refuses to accept this quietly and reminds Kyle that their engagement was arranged by their parents, meaning he has no right to annul it on his own. Kyle retorts that he does not need anyone's permission because Scarlett is supposedly a petty criminal who has been harassing Taran out of jealousy. Taran immediately starts playing the victim as Kyle describes how Scarlett allegedly bullied her at the academy. Scarlett calls out the lie, pointing out that this is the first time she has ever met Taran face to face since they belong to different classes. Unfortunately, Kyle never had much intelligence to begin with, and whatever little he possessed seems to have vanished after falling for Taran. He assumes Scarlett is insulting his new fiancée by implying she belongs to the elite class while Taran is from the regular one. Kyle insists that Taran told him about every instance of Scarlett's supposed abuse, including locking her inside a restroom and pushing her down a staircase. He labels Scarlett a heartless villain, and at that moment, she decides she has tolerated enough from this immature man-child. Scarlett informs Kyle that she no longer cares about the accusations and is willing to accept the cancellation of the engagement as well. Still, she requests one final thing before they completely sever their relationship. Kyle is unwilling to grant her even that small request, but Taran, confident in her triumph, urges him to listen to the pitiful woman so she will have no lingering regrets. Kyle begins praising Taran's generosity and then asks Scarlett what she wants. Scarlett slowly approaches them, clenching her fist tightly, and states that her final wish is to punch him in the face. Kyle is shocked and asks whether she has lost her sanity. Instead of responding, Scarlett delivers a powerful punch straight into Taran's face with such flawless form that even Muhammad Ali would have admired it. However, that single punch carries a very long backstory behind it. Whether for better or worse, we must endure every bit of it to truly appreciate the payoff. From a very young age, Scarlett genuinely enjoyed hitting people, and nearly every other week she would beat some unfortunate soul senseless with her fists. Her brother, Leonardo, constantly scolded her for her violent behavior. Scarlett, however, insisted that she was doing it for the greater good. While Leonardo acknowledged that she had rescued a commoner from a spoiled noble child on that occasion, he could not erase the image of her standing there covered in blood. He warned her that she would soon be formally introduced into noble society at an upcoming ceremony, and that she needed to stop punching people and start acting like a proper lady. That ceremony became Scarlett's greatest trial when she encountered the unbearable Kyle for the very first time. He immediately told her that from that day forward, she would serve him. Scarlett had to summon every ounce of self-control she possessed to suppress the urge to punch him, knowing full well that he was the kingdom's second prince and also her fiancé. Unfortunately, this was only the start of her misery. Kyle continued tormenting her with constant bullying and cruel pranks, while her hands remained tied due to their family's political arrangement. Even her own father was powerless to intervene because opposing the royal family was out of the question. As a result, Scarlett endured years of suffering in silence. Eventually, she turned 15 and enrolled in the National Academy, entering with top scores and quickly gaining widespread admiration. Sadly, Kyle was also there, and he publicly announced that she would continue serving him as his slave even within the academy walls. By this time, Scarlett had grown numb to his tantrums and harassment, so she maintained a blank expression whenever she dealt with him. A few days later, Kyle barged into her classroom in a foul temper and began verbally abusing her while ordering her to buy his lunch. Scarlett apologized and said she would take care of it immediately. However, the scoundrel was not satisfied and dragged her away to punish her, leaving his lackeys behind to monitor the other girls so they would not report him to the teachers. Scarlett soon found out that Kyle was furious because his poor grades had gotten him demoted to the regular class. He decided to release his frustration by targeting her. He planned to cut her hair and bring it to his class as a trophy. Even with Scarlett's exceptional patience, that crossed a line. She warned him to stop or she would report everything to her family. In response, Kyle insulted her father, calling him nothing more than a lapdog to the royal household. Scarlett was seconds away from sending him straight to the Shadow Realm when Prince Julius, the first prince, happened to be nearby and intervened immediately. Kyle was powerless in front of his older brother and left after being sternly lectured. Scarlet knew Kyle would eventually return to harass her again, but she sincerely thanked Julius for stepping in. Julius replied that he was simply preventing his younger brother from making a bigger mistake, then engaged Scarlet in casual conversation. She soon began to respect him for his upright character. She was aware that Prince Julius was widely regarded as the most likely candidate to become the next king. However, corrupt nobles feared his integrity and instead supported Kyle to protect their own interests. Scarlet's admiration for Julius quickly turned into jealousy when she discovered that he had achieved perfect scores in every subject, ending her long reign as the Academy's top student. She assumed he must be incredibly gifted and diligent, but when Julius approached her and casually mentioned how easy it was for him to earn full marks, Scarlet became furious. Taking it personally, she devoted herself to working even harder so she could surpass him next time. Soon after, rumors began circulating that Julius had intentionally lost to make her happy. This only fueled her frustration further, and she decided to completely ignore him. Julius, however, continued bothering her. He even followed her after school, asking about her relationship with Kyle. At that moment, Scarlet realized that Kyle had not harassed her recently, despite the humiliation he had suffered earlier. She concluded that Julius had been deliberately hovering around her to keep Kyle at bay, and she almost started viewing him in a positive light. Julius then unexpectedly began flirting with her, and Scarlet might have fallen for it if he had not referred to her as an interesting creature. She was stunned by the comment, only to learn that Julius meant it quite literally. He truly found Scarlet fascinating and worth studying, to the point that he kept written notes about her. From that moment on, Scarlet began to despise Julius and wished that someday she could punch him along with Kyle. Returning to the present, all of Scarlet's pent-up fury finally finds its outlet in Turan's face. With a single blow, Scarlet sends her flying through the air, knocking over 2 other men at the same time. Kyle panics and demands to know what she thinks she is doing. Scarlet coldly replies that his cruel words had angered her, and Turan was the one who ended up paying for it. She then turns and walks toward the stunned crowd of nobles, fully aware that every last one of them is corrupt to the core. She is furious that they applauded when Kyle canceled the engagement, so she pulls out the punching glove she always carries with her for emergencies and prepares herself for what comes next. The nobles fall into panic and immediately shout for the guards, but Scarlet puts them to sleep instantly with magic before proceeding to beat the nobles down one after another. In their desperation, the nobles beg anyone to save them, even offering their own slaves as payment, despite slave trading being strictly forbidden in the country. Scarlet realizes that these men are completely irredeemable trash, and knocking them all unconscious would not weigh on her conscience at all. With that in mind, she activates her unique time-based magic to dramatically increase her speed and begins her rampage, unleashing fists that are rated E for everyone. Before long, every noble lies sprawled across the floor. Kyle is the final one still standing, and by now he has already wet himself after witnessing Scarlet's true nature. She calmly tells him that it is finally his turn, and just as she is about to strike him, her brother Leonardo arrives to stop her. Unfortunately, he is too late, and Scarlet sends Kyle flying into a wall with a single punch, feeling incredibly refreshed afterward. While Leonardo is horrified at the sight of nobles scattered across the ground, Julius finds the situation highly entertaining. Scarlet is briefly tempted to punch him as well, but she decides not to go that far for the moment. She approaches Julius and Leonardo to greet them, and they ask her what caused such an explosive outburst. At first, Scarlet speaks in a stiff, almost ChatGPT-like manner, saying that the nobles committed unspeakable crimes and then attempted to justify themselves, so she punished them immediately. However, when Julius asks her to provide specific details, she bluntly responds that they annoyed her, so she knocked them out. Leonardo nearly has a heart attack upon hearing this, but Julius bursts out laughing and says he wishes cameras had already been invented because he would have loved to watch Scarlet beat up all the nobles. He jokes that she should have waited for him to arrive before starting her slugfest, but Scarlet replies that such a request is unreasonable. Meanwhile, Leonardo begins spiraling as he worries about the consequences of her actions, but Julius reassures him that he will handle everything. Suddenly, Scarlet starts feeling lightheaded and collapses, with Julius catching her head just before it hits the ground. Scarlet wakes up 3 days later, hearing a ringing sound echoing inside her head. As she slowly regains consciousness, she realizes she overused the divine power granted to her by Cronoa, the god of time. However, the moment she opens her eyes, she finds a maid straddling her and pointing a knife at her throat. Scarlet calmly asks the maid who she is, but the maid instead screams for her to die and attempts to stab her. She fails to outspeed Scarlet's reaction time and is immediately punched into a wall. Leonardo rushes into the room after hearing the loud crash and is completely aghast to see that the very first thing Scarlett did after waking up was punch someone. He tells her how worried he had been about her condition, and soon after, Julius enters the room once Scarlett finishes freshening up. Julius informs her that her engagement to Kyle has officially been annulled with approval from both families. Kyle has been stripped of his inheritance from the royal family for protecting nobles involved in slave trading, and all the nobles present at the party have been arrested as well. Scarlett is pleased by this news and asks Julius whether she will also face punishment. He tells her that she is far too valuable to the royal family to be punished, but until the situation settles down, she will likely have difficulty finding anyone willing to marry her. Julius then shares some good news. He tells Scarlett that her recent actions have turned into a legendary tale throughout the kingdom, with people talking about her as if she were Batman. They refer to her as the blood-stained lady who sent countless evil nobles to prison using nothing but her fists, and they regard her as a hero. Leonardo is devastated upon hearing yet another terrifying nickname for his sister, but Julius reminds him that more pressing matters must be addressed. Among the arrested nobles are many influential figures holding government positions. Their greatest challenge, however, is the Prime Minister, who has been the strongest supporter of Kyle's faction. Julius explains that the king had already suspected corruption within Kyle's faction, which led him to establish an organization called CIO2 to investigate it, with Leonardo serving as its current leader. He then summons one of their agents, the first person who successfully infiltrated Kyle's faction and gathered valuable intelligence. The agent turns out to be Sigurd, one of Kyle's lackeys, who immediately apologizes to Scarlett for treating her rudely all this time. Scarlett responds that he deserves an Oscar for how convincing his performance was, causing Sigurd to grow increasingly nervous the more she speaks. Julius gives Scarlett permission to punch him if it will help her move on, and she accepts the offer. However, she only lightly taps Sigurd on the cheek, acknowledging that he had secretly helped her many times while working under Kyle. After that, Scarlett takes her leave, realizing that she is finally free to live however she wants now that she is no longer bound to Kyle. The first task on her agenda is interrogating the maid who attempted to assassinate her. The following morning, Scarlett heads to the warehouse where the maid Nanika is being held, only to discover that Nanika has discarded her clothes. Suddenly, a feral cat attacks her, but Scarlett easily knocks it aside and realizes that the maid was actually a shape-shifting beast folk. She orders Nanika to return to human form so they can talk, and it turns out that the maid was actually a boy all along. He declares that he is determined to kill Scarlett no matter the cost. Scarlett realizes that his behavior is caused by the slave crest engraved on his chest, which forces him to obey any command issued by his master. She asks Nanika whether he would be willing to tell her everything about his master if she can free him, and he challenges her to try. Scarlett takes that as consent and immediately pins him to the ground before using her powers to reverse time on his slave crest. In this world, every human is born favored by a god, though most never learn which one blessed them. Those who do realize it can wield the divine powers granted to them. Scarlett is blessed by Cronoa, the god of time, which is why the royal family values her so highly. She uses Cronoa's power to restore Nanika's body to the state it was in before he was enslaved, though doing so leaves her exhausted. True to his word, the twink fulfills his promise and tells Scarlett that the one who sent him was Prime Minister Godwin. Godwin's son was among those Scarlett defeated at the party, and Godwin ordered Nanika to assassinate her. Nanika explains that he was actually sent to spy on Scarlett's family long before that incident. He reveals that Godwin is a cunning man who plants spies in every noble household to uncover their secrets, then blackmails them into participating in the slave trade so they fall even deeper under his control. That information is enough for Scarlett, and she prepares to head straight to Godwin's estate to beat him senseless. Nanika urgently tells her to stop, warning that Godwin is constantly guarded. However, that does nothing to deter Scarlett. The former servant then tells her that she will have a better opportunity to get to him when he attends a slave auction scheduled for 1 week later. He admits that he does not yet know where the auction will take place, but he promises Scarlett that he can connect her with a slave trader, since he is willing to do absolutely anything to take revenge on the bastard who enslaved him along with many others of his kind. Scarlett is happy to accept his assistance and decides to bring him along, completely unaware that Julius has overheard her entire plan. A few days later, Scarlett and Nanika head into the slums to track down the slave trader, and Scarlett casually mentions a chunk of myethil she bought from a child for 1 gold coin. Nanika immediately tells her that she was scammed, but Scarlett refuses to believe him. She then turns toward Julius, who tagged along without being invited. At first, Julius claims that he wants to better understand his people so that he can become a more capable king. However, when Scarlett presses him further, he confesses that he overheard her conversation and realized he could not pass up such an entertaining opportunity to watch some people get beaten senseless. Just then, a group of thugs shows up, and Scarlett gets excited, thinking she finally has someone to punch. Nanika quickly tells her to keep her violent impulses under control because he can talk them out of the situation. Nanika approaches the thugs and offers to pay them if they take them to a trader named Junk, but the thugs refuse, saying they do not do business with weak-looking people like them. They brag about how a kid told them that some stupid rich woman bought a rock from him for 1 gold coin, and they decided to exploit that foolishness. They also mention that they beat the kid and took his gold coin, proudly declaring that the strong always prey on the weak. Hearing this makes Scarlet furious, and she decides these men deserve a beating. She enhances her strength and then uses her power to boost her speed. She takes down 3 of the thugs in an instant and then begins aura farming on the remaining 2, who quickly realize they are dealing with the infamous violent noblewoman. Scarlet knocks out the man with the eye patch and then turns to the final bandit, the one who claimed that the strong prey on the weak. She tells him that by his own logic, she is free to do whatever she wants to him. The thug begs for mercy, promising to return the stolen money to the child. Scarlet tells him he can do that after getting beaten, but the thug immediately tries to bargain by offering the location of the slave trader. However, he foolishly blurts out the location right away. Scarlet thanks him politely before knocking him unconscious. She then turns back to Julius, who is applauding her, and asks what he was doing while she was fighting. Julius asks whether he should have stepped in, and Scarlet immediately shuts that idea down. After that, Julius decides to personally speak with the slave trader Junk, worrying that Junk might recognize Nanika or that Scarlet would beat him unconscious before extracting any useful information. He manages to handle the situation in just a few minutes by bluffing and threatening Junk, successfully learning the location of the upcoming slave auction. On their way back, Scarlet calls Julius a potential con artist, and he replies that being a conman is still better than being a violent lunatic. Nanika wonders aloud whether this is the so-called enemies to lovers genre he has heard about. Moments later, however, Scarlet and Julius suddenly find themselves in agreement as they ask Nanika for ideas on how to infiltrate the auction. Soon after, Scarlet goes to visit a nobleman named Zathan, who turns out to be the slave trader whose contact Junk provided. Zathan is delighted to see a new customer standing before him. Still, he scolds Scarlet, saying it is unbecoming of a lady to deal with a lowlife like Junk just to reach him, especially when she could have simply asked any noble acquaintance for his address. Scarlet responds that it no longer matters and then asks Zathan about his relationship with Junk. Zathan explains that they have no direct business ties and that he merely hired Junk to bring him any potentially valuable slaves found in the slums. Scarlet asks what he means by valuable, and Zathan replies that dwarves, elves, beastmen, and other non-human races fall into that category. He then points directly at Nanika, stating that the beastman accompanying her is also an exceptionally valuable specimen. Nanika becomes visibly nervous upon hearing this, and Scarlet asks Zathan how he was able to tell that her servant was a beastman. Zathan replies that he has plenty of experience in this business and begins laughing. Scarlet is nearly tempted to beat him senseless on the spot, but Nanika stops her, reminding her that they need to follow the plan. Once the sick bastard finally stops laughing, he asks Scarlet what kind of slave she is looking to acquire. She tells him that she has heard about a slave auction that will soon be held in the capital and that she wants to attend it. Zathan becomes serious and explains that in order to participate in the auction, she must first be verified. That requires revealing her status to other members of the auction circle and either buying or selling at least 6 slaves. Scarlet offers him as much money as he wants, but Zathan replies that money is not the issue. Instead, he proposes that if she hands over the beastfolk slaves she currently has, he will escort her to the auction while introducing her as the daughter of a distant relative. Scarlet is furious upon hearing this, but she somehow suppresses her anger and puts on a polite smile, saying that if this is all it takes to gain entry into the auction, then she is willing to give him the slave. Shortly afterward, Scarlet and Nanika leave the mansion, and Scarlet cannot believe that slave trading is being conducted so openly within the kingdom. She is also relieved that everything unfolded exactly according to plan and that Zathan behaved precisely as Nanika predicted. Nanika is surprised to see that Scarlet did not resort to punching her way through the situation, and she responds by pinching him for making jokes about it. As they head back, Scarlet asks Nanika whether he is truly certain about this plan, since even though she can remove his slave crest afterward, she will not be able to protect him while he is officially registered as a slave. Nanika replies that it sounds like she is about to put him up for auction, and he assures her that he will not allow anyone to harm his merchandise before the auction takes place. He adds that he is doing this as atonement for attempting to kill her, then suddenly begins yawning. Scarlet understands that beastfolk are generally active at night and sleep during the day. In the very next moment, Nanika transforms into his animal form and falls asleep in Scarlet's arms. She carries him back to the inn, where Prince Julius is waiting for them. Scarlet informs him that the negotiations were a success, and Julius is shocked to hear that she managed to resolve the situation without punching anyone. Scarlett is already irritated by this remark. Julius then adds that he wishes he had been there to witness the rare moment when she solved a problem without violence, though he admits that the prince of the country cannot exactly go out buying slaves. Scarlett decides not to engage with him any further. As soon as she puts Nanika to bed, she steps outside to get some fresh air. Julius says that he was thinking the same thing and accompanies her, staying close at all times. Scarlett is annoyed by this, but Julius continues following her, claiming that he has some business on this street. Just then, an apple pie vendor calls out to Scarlett, saying he has a special offer for cute girls. He explains that if she buys an apple pie, he will throw in a free apple. Julius immediately takes advantage of the deal and buys one as well. Next, a jewelry merchant tries to sell Scarlett some cheap accessories, and Julius buys those too, but not before haggling. He even makes a purchase from a shady fortune teller. Scarlett finally asks what kind of business Julius actually has on the street. Julius replies that he made it all up and calls Scarlett cute for believing such an obvious lie. Scarlett becomes furious and punches a nearby wall, since she cannot punch the prince in the face. Julius merely chuckles at her reaction and then hands her an apple pie, which makes Scarlett feel like she has ascended to heaven. Julius apologizes for teasing her, but Scarlett tells him that one apple pie is not enough to earn her forgiveness. However, when he adds another apple pie to the offer, it does the trick, and she quickly forgives him. Afterward, Scarlett comments that Julius seems to know the city's layout extremely well, and he replies that he used to skip classes frequently just to explore the city. He asks her how she feels after seeing the market, and Scarlett replies that when Kyle used to send her out to buy bread for him, she never had the chance to really look around. Now that she can finally observe it properly, she thinks the marketplace feels lively and cheerful. Julius is happy to hear that she likes it and says that every time he visited this place, he wished she could see it too. Scarlett wonders whether he followed her just to show her around and thinks that if he had simply said so from the beginning, she would not have been nearly as irritated. Suddenly, Julius begins speaking at length, saying that he absolutely hates being bored. Ever since he was a child, the only things that ever captured his attention were ugly, twisted, or unusual. He explains that he was constantly surrounded by foolish nobles who tried to win his favor, forcing him to act a certain way around them. Then he noticed Scarlett, who showed no interest in him at all. On top of that, he witnessed his younger brother bullying her, which prompted him to approach her. He told her that if Kyle was frightening her, he could complain to his father on her behalf. However, Scarlett responded with a creepy smile and said that he had just made a good joke. That was the exact moment she captured his full attention, and from then on, he never stopped finding her fascinating. He repeats that most things in the world bore him, but he despises being bored. That is why he surrounds himself with things he finds interesting, and at this moment, there is no one more interesting to him than Scarlett. With those words, he suddenly leans in and kisses her on the cheek, leaving Scarlett completely stunned. Julius explains that this is not the kind of love found in traditional romances, but he is certain that he likes her deeply and that she is very precious to him. Later that night, as Scarlett sits alone in her room, she still cannot process what just happened. She flops onto her bed, wondering whether that kiss was simply another trick by the prince to tease and annoy her. The following day, Scarlett meets Zach again and tells him that she will hand Nanika over to him, provided that he keeps his promise. He agrees but asks her to prove first that the slave is truly a beast folk. Scarlett asks whether he doubts her, and he replies that it is simply his policy to confirm the goods before accepting them. Scarlett orders Nanika to transform, and he immediately turns into a cat or dog or whatever kind of creature he is. Zin is thrilled by the sight. At that moment, a large and intimidating man with fangs protruding from his lower jaw enters the room. He stares at Scarlett and asks Zach whether she is the slave they are receiving today. Zach tells the slave, named Donovan, that Scarlett is the customer and that the beast folk accompanying her is the slave. Nanika is clearly unhappy to see him, and Scarlett realizes that Donovan is a half-human, half-a-magic beast hybrid, making him a lycanthrope. Zach apologizes for Donovan's rude behavior and orders him to take the beast away. Donovan becomes excited and remarks that beast men are famous for their rapid regeneration. That he snaps a metal collar around Nanika's neck and begins dragging him away, but Nanika resists, angering Donovan. Donovan swings his barbed whip through the air to strike him, but Scarlett suddenly grabs the whip with her bare hands. She tells Zach that his slave seems poorly disciplined and that if he lacks the courage to punish him properly, she can do it herself. Donovan scoffs at her words, and even Zach looks down on Scarlett, warning her not to provoke his slave because Donovan is a former A-rank adventurer. He claims that she would need strength comparable to a knight captain to defeat him. Scarlett asks why that even matters, confused, and Zach awkwardly says that he is only worried about her. However, Donovan declares that it is already too late. He refuses to let a woman trample on his pride and decides to teach her a lesson. He tries to yank the whip out of her hands but cannot loosen Scarlett's iron grip. He strains even harder, and Zach tells him to stop fooling around, saying there is no way a girl could overpower a man in a much higher weight class. Donovan replies that he is not joking and is genuinely using all his strength. Scarlett then casually asks Zach whether Donovan will also be put up for auction. Zach answers that Donovan will remain with him as a personal bodyguard and as a trainer for other slaves. This pleases Scarlett, since it means she does not need to worry about him losing his value if he gets injured. In the next instant, Scarlett hurls Donovan into the air and punches him straight into the stratosphere. Zach is utterly dumbfounded by what he witnesses, but Scarlett does not spare him any attention. She turns to Nanika, removes the collar, and notices that he is bleeding. She heals his wounds with magic and hugs him, telling him that she will return for him soon and that he should endure whatever hardship he faces there until then. Scarlett then addresses Zach about the shattered window, but he tells her she does not need to pay for the repairs. He even thanks her for disciplining Donovan, admitting that he has never been able to do so himself. When Scarlett returns to her inn, she finds a familiar carriage parked outside. Her brother steps out, visibly furious. He tells her that she can explain everything once they reach the capital. When Scarlett notices Julius sitting inside the carriage, she curses him for being a useless prince who could not even stop her brother from discovering what they were doing. After they arrive at the capital, Leo starts drinking strong liquor at the tea table while scolding both Julius and Scarlett, asking whether they have any common sense at all. He demands to know how they could risk their lives so recklessly, but Julius responds that they managed to locate the slave auction, so it was worth it. Leo calms down slightly and says that he also conducted his own investigation and discovered that Prime Minister Godwin himself is organizing the auction. Scarlett informs him that the auction will take place in 2 days, causing Leo to panic as he immediately begins planning for the major operation. Meanwhile, Scarlett keeps staring at Julius, who smiles and asks whether she wants some apple pie like they had the other day. She becomes irritated with him for no clear reason, but Leo interrupts, saying that he has devised a plan. First, he wants Scarlett to return home, but she refuses, stating that this is the one thing she absolutely cannot do. Leo assumes that her only motivation is punching Godwin in the face, but she tells him that it goes far beyond that. She explains that ever since she was young, she has seen good people suffer while corrupt nobles continue to thrive. She believes that greedy and evil nobles cannot be punished through ordinary means, and that she must deal with them in her own way. She suddenly stands up and declares that selfish, greedy nobles are the most satisfying targets to punch. Leo and Julius respond with their usual reactions to her violent tendencies. Scarlett adds that ordinary people cannot even fight nobles, but since she is the daughter of a high-ranking duke, she will be fine. Julius agrees with her, much to Leo's despair, as he fears that Scarlett's violent behavior will destroy their family's reputation. However, an even greater concern arises. Representatives from the vanquished empire may be present at the auction. Both Scarlett and Julius tense up upon hearing this, since the vanquished empire has been hostile toward their Palestine kingdom for the past 300 years. The empire is infamous for its ruthless culture, where power alone determines hierarchy, and it is ruled by mighty dragon riders. Although peace negotiations between the two nations have recently begun, Leo confirms intelligence that the vanquished Air Force has been in contact with Godwin. Coincidentally, at the same time, Godwin is meeting with officials from the vanquished aerial army. Furious at Scarlett for ruining Kyle's party and derailing their plans, Godwin orders the soldiers to eliminate her. A red-haired soldier eagerly accepts the mission and flies off on his dragon. However, Godwin is displeased by the man's arrogant attitude. Just then, a girl speaks up, telling him to forget about the dragon riders and to look at what she has brought instead. She aims a gun at Godwin, but because firearms have not yet been created in this world, he has no idea what the object is. The girl explains that it is a present bestowed by the goddess Palmia. In response, Godwin pulls out his pendant and says that he already possesses a gift from Palmia, so he doubts that the strange-looking cylinder could possibly do anything. However, when the girl fires the pistol and shatters a flower vase, Godwin is completely stunned. The girl is revealed to be Tarun, Kyle's mistress, and she tells Godwin to use this weapon, capable of killing even the most terrifying enemies, to secure victory in his future battles. Before long, the day of the auction arrives, and Zach nervously greets Scarlett at the auction house. He hands her a mask that will probably do very little to conceal her identity, and Scarlett thanks him while wishing him good luck for the auction. Still, she smirks inwardly, fully aware that this will be the final auction for him and for all the disgusting nobles involved. Zap then escorts Scarlett into the hall, where she continues thinking through her plan. After discovering the auction's location, Julius immediately dispatched agents from his organization to infiltrate the place disguised as servants. However, he knew they would all be unarmed inside the auction hall, and even if they resorted to magic, they would be unable to arrest Godwin. That is why he designated Scarlet as their primary combat force. Unlike the rest of the weaklings, she only needs her fists to defeat everyone. Keeping that in mind, Scarlet enters the auction hall with confidence. At the same time, Leonardo and the other knights wait outside, prepared to strike as soon as Julius gives the order. Leo feels confident in their preparations, yet he silently prays that Scarlet will honor her promise not to use unnecessary violence. His stomach aches because he knows she struggles to control her fists, and he can only hope that their mission somehow succeeds. Meanwhile, Scarlet listens as the nobles discuss the kinds of slaves they hope to acquire. Although their preferences vary, they all agree that the main attraction of tonight's auction is the shape-shifting beast folk. Suddenly, the lights go out, and Scarlet accidentally bumps into a man. He apologizes before walking away, and she feels as though she has heard his voice somewhere before. However, she has no time to dwell on it. As the announcer steps onto the stage and officially begins the auction, the first slave presented is a one-winged bird woman, and the nobles immediately begin placing bids. Scarlet observes them from the balcony, barely restraining her anger, when Julius suddenly appears beside her. She asks him why he is there when he is supposed to be leading the mission, and he replies that he came to check on her. Scarlet starts to walk away, but Julius follows, asking whether she has spotted Godwin yet. She answers that she has not seen him, though she has an idea of where he might be. Julius urges her to act quickly, warning that the royal knights are stationed outside the gate and might seize her target if she delays. Scarlet promptly proposes a deal, asking him to postpone calling in the knights in exchange for giving him the spectacle of a lifetime by beating Godwin in front of him. Julius is immediately tempted by the offer, as that is the very reason he joined the undercover operation. However, merely witnessing the Prime Minister's humiliation is not enough for him, and he asks Scarlet what she will give him in return for delaying the command. She considers it briefly before promising to swear her loyalty to the crown and the kingdom for the rest of her life. Julius instantly rejects the proposal, telling her that he is not asking her to serve the crown. Gently holding her face, he asks her to pledge her loyalty to him instead. Scarlet responds that it will amount to the same thing eventually, since he will become the next emperor. Julius, however, tells her that he is impatient. She hesitates, but the prince makes it clear that she will not get what she wants unless she pledges her loyalty to him right now. Scarlet finally gives in and swears her allegiance to him, which makes Julius genuinely happy. After settling the matter, he asks about Godwin's location, and Scarlet believes he is overseeing everything from the highest balcony. Julius says they should hurry there, and Scarlet replies that she is even more eager than he is to beat the corruption out of the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, inside the prison, guards drag away an elf woman while her daughter is left behind. The child struggles to follow her mother, but Nanika holds her back, telling her that it is pointless. The girl begins to cry as the other slaves pray to gods and saints for salvation, yet Nanika assures them that everyone will be safe elsewhere. Scarlet puts the guards to sleep, and Julius praises her precise control over magic. She sulks at the comment, reminding him that he defeated her in magical practical exams at the academy, and Julius secretly enjoys seeing her jealousy. Soon after, they encounter a group of thugs, and Scarlet immediately recognizes them as Godwin's personal guards. She decides to treat them as appetizers before the main course and removes her gloves to reveal her diamond-studded knuckles. Without even using Cronoa's blessing to enhance her speed, she completely overwhelms the thugs, then smashes through the door of the room where Godwin is watching the auction with his closest allies. As everyone struggles to understand what is happening, Scarlet strides confidently inside, removes her mask, and tells Godwin that her fists have been itching to meet his face. Godwin is shocked by her appearance, but his son is enraged, having a personal grudge against Scarlet. He casts a lightning spell at her, but Julius immediately nullifies it using the royal ring. Godwin panics upon seeing the ring, which can cancel any spell cast by the Empire's people and can only be worn by the Emperor or Julius. Julius begins intimidating the corrupt nobles into fear, making them soil themselves as they realize they are doomed. Still, they convince one another that the blonde man before them must be an imposter, and Godwin decides to eliminate both him and Scarlet quickly. He orders a special slave to be brought in, and Scarlet recognizes the ferocious beast man as Donovan, who has transformed into his beast form. Godwin commands Donovan to kill both Scarlet and Julius. At that moment, Sigurd appears and slashes Donovan's hand. Scarlet realizes that the man she bumped into earlier was Sigurd, who had been pretending to be Kyle's loyal follower in order to infiltrate the auction. Godwin, now overwhelmed with frustration, orders everyone to attack the intruders. Sigurd takes charge and tells Scarlet and Julius to stay behind him. However, Scarlet grabs him by the collar and yanks him back, telling him that the nobles are her targets and that he is not allowed to touch them. The command excites Sigurd, and Scarlet clarifies that he is only permitted to fight Donovan while she handles the rest of the scum. He immediately accepts her order, allowing Scarlet to revel in the chaos as she flings nobles around and creates a miniature cyclone. No one even dares to approach her after seeing the threatening grin on her face. Still, Scarlet goes after them one by one, hurling several nobles off the balcony in her violent rampage. Shortly after, Leo rushes inside to find out what is happening since he never received any signal from the prince, and he is completely aghast at the blood-soaked scene before him. Scarlet stands proudly in front of a pile of defeated nobles, and Leo briefly believes that she has turned into a mass murderer. Scarlet assures him that she restrained herself and that no one is actually dead. Just then, they notice Sigurd struggling in his fight against Donovan. The remaining guests flee in panic, and Leo worries that some of them may escape at this rate. Julius agrees and decides that it is time to mobilize the knights, but Scarlet reminds him that she still has not beaten Godwin yet. Despite her protest, Julius orders Leo to send the knights after Godwin, and Scarlet points out that this goes against what he promised her. Julius reassures her that she alone will have the right to beat the Prime Minister senseless. Leo turns back in confusion and asks what the hell is going on. Julius explains that he exchanged vows with Scarlet and therefore must honor his promise. Leo is stunned by this revelation, mistakenly believing that Julius and Scarlet exchanged wedding vows. He becomes emotional, thinking that his sister has finally found the man she wants to spend her life with, while Scarlet has no idea why he is acting so dramatically. Julius realizes that both of them are somewhat clueless when it comes to reading the situation, but he ignores it and sends a signal to the knights waiting outside. Soon after, Leo recovers from his emotional outburst and activates his special ability called clairvoyance to scan the entire mansion. He locates Godwin and his son heading toward the rooftop, and moments later, he spots a dragon hovering above it. The three of them rush toward the roof, and Julius remarks that his suspicion about Godwin collaborating with the dragon riders of the vanquished empire has proven correct. He warns that they must hurry or Godwin will escape, but the problem is that they are in the basement with 5 floors separating them from the rooftop. Scarlet already has a solution. She kicks off her shoes and tells Leo to free Nanika and all the other slaves. Activating her acceleration ability, she clears an entire flight of stairs in a single leap. She rebounds off the walls, smashes through a window, and then launches herself straight up to the rooftop. Using so much power at once places an enormous strain on her body, but with the dragon and Godwin in her sights, she has no intention of letting the old bastard escape. Meanwhile, Godwin and his son reach the dragon rider and begin insulting him, saying that a mere soldier like him should dismount and face them on equal footing. The dragon rider is angered by their arrogance and calls them lowly humans before ordering his dragon to deal with them. The dragon swings its massive tail to knock the 2 fools away. At that moment, Scarlet drops from the sky like a meteor and blocks the dragon's tail with one hand, telling the rider that she cannot allow him to hurt her punching bags. She has already crushed Godwin's son beneath her feet and casually informs Godwin that he is next. Suddenly, the dragon rider leaps down, saying that he never expected someone to stop his dragon's tail with a single hand. He kneels before Scarlet, throws back his hood, and declares that he has fallen in love with her, even asking her to marry him, shocking everyone present. Scarlet flatly rejects the proposal and smacks him away. The dragon attempts to avenge its master by attacking her, but Scarlet grabs its jaws and slams it into the ground. The dragon rider rises again, and after witnessing Scarlet overpower both him and his dragon, his fascination with her only deepens. He once again begs her to accept his proposal, but she punches him in the stomach, knocking the air out of him. Despite this, the red-haired man continues rambling about how beautiful, strong, and elegant she is. Scarlet kicks him away, believing that should finally put him down. However, he manages to stand again, and although he can barely remain upright, he still insists on marrying Scarlet, claiming he has never encountered a woman as strong as her. Scarlet tells him to stop acting like an idiot, revealing that she knows he is Al Flame, the first prince of the vanquished empire, who came here to assassinate the incompetent Godwin. Godwin panics upon hearing this, and Al Flame confirms her claim. He announces that he came to kill Godwin and his followers because traitors like them are the greatest threat to peace between the 2 nations. Al Flame throws his spear at Godwin to finish him quickly, but Scarlet shatters the spear with a kick and orders him to step back. The prince immediately closes the distance and grabs her leg, and Scarlet realizes that he was only pretending to be weak earlier, as his body is still in excellent condition. She asks whether he is truly confident in his endurance, and Al Flame responds that he possesses a blessing that hardens his body like steel, making him immune to physical attacks. He tells her that her blows will not work and insists she let him deal with Godwin, but she refuses, saying she has her own way of defeating him. Without warning, she grabs his head, and Al lowers his guard, thinking she is about to kiss him. Instead, Scarlet forces his head down and smashes him with her full strength, enduring repeated knee strikes to her face in the process. Al pretends that he is unharmed, but once he gets back up, he begins to feel dizzy as Scarlet's attacks have given him a concussion. He staggers, yet his obsession remains, and he once again urges Scarlet to come with him, claiming that this kingdom of weaklings does not deserve her. Having had enough of his nonsense, Scarlet grabs him by the collar and activates her power to fling him straight back to his own kingdom. With that resolved, Scarlet finally turns her attention to Godwin, who is already wetting himself in terror. He apologizes for attempting to kill her and for using Turan to sabotage her engagement with Kyle. The second admission surprises Scarlet, and she asks whether he helped Turan get close to Kyle. She warns him that if he played a role in humiliating Kyle that day, he will pay dearly. Godwin stammers, admitting that he merely followed Turan's plan. Now intrigued, Scarlet pauses, and Godwin seizes the opportunity to bargain. He offers information in exchange for his life and reveals that Turan is no ordinary girl, claiming she was summoned from another world by the goddess herself. Scarlet is unsure whether he is telling the truth, but the revelation is enough to momentarily halt her. Unfortunately for Godwin, Scarlet believes fear has turned him into a senile old man spouting nonsense to save himself. She cannot accept that Turan is a girl summoned from another world by the goddess. Deciding that he deserves punishment regardless, Scarlet prepares to act. Godwin continues negotiating desperately, offering her anything she wants. Scarlet thinks briefly and says that she needs a human punching bag with shifty eyes, a pointed nose, and thick padded clothing. Godwin agrees before realizing that she is describing him. Scarlet had been waiting for this realization. She activates Cronoa's power, causing time around her to slow down by 100-fold while she alone moves normally. She punches Godwin for all the people he exploited and for those he kidnapped and sold into slavery. She punches him for destroying Nanika's life and for trying to kill her. Finally, she punches him simply because she wants to beat him senseless. As Scarlet delivers the final blow, her time magic fades, and Godwin suffers the accumulated damage from every strike at once. She politely bows as his body is launched away. Moments later, Scarlet collapses to her knees, having exhausted too much of Cronoa's power. The tips of her hair turn black, and blood begins to seep from her hands as well. Scarlet is anxious that her brother will end up feeling disappointed in her. She suddenly loses her footing, but Julius arrives at that exact moment and catches her before she falls. He activates his power to heal her while commenting that if he did not know her personally, he would never believe a human could have fought in a battle like this. Shortly afterward, Leo and the others arrive as well and immediately start asking Scarlet whether she is all right. They are also curious about Godwin's whereabouts, and she answers that he was just sent flying straight through the wall. Unfortunately, Scarlet had underestimated the old Prime Minister, because he is still standing on his feet. He leaps down from the wall and pulls out the pistol that Turan gave him, aiming it at Scarlet and firing. Julius instantly steps in front of her and takes the bullet with his own body. Everyone is horrified by what they see, while Godwin feels satisfied, believing he has removed at least one obstacle from his path. Scarlet becomes enraged and immediately charges at him, smashing him into the ground with a single punch. Godwin tells her that her fists cannot hurt him because he possesses a blessing from the goddess Pomia that shields him from all damage. However, the fool makes the mistake of showing the item to Scarlet, and she snatches it away in an instant before breaking his nose. She tells Godwin that killing Julius is an unforgivable sin and that he should prepare to apologize to him in the afterlife. With that, she strikes the old man with all her strength and sends him flying. She declares that she has avenged Julius and asks him to watch over them from heaven. Julius then coughs and tells her that he is not dead yet, as Leo's healing magic saved his life. He asks Scarlet whether she is disappointed that he survived, and she responds that she is simply relieved to see him safe. Soon after, all the nobles involved are arrested, and Godwin is confirmed to still be alive despite taking Scarlet's full-powered punch. Meanwhile, Scarlet rests inside her carriage, satisfied that she was able to beat the living daylights out of her target. At the same time, in the Vanquish Empire, Prince Al is stuck in a tree when one of his friends arrives to rescue him. The friend kicks the tree, causing Al to fall to the ground, and then supports him as they walk toward his dragon. Al complains that nearly every bone in his body feels broken, but his friend tells him that the joke is not funny at all, since Al has the toughest body on the entire planet. The red-haired prince explains that he was flung all the way there from another country and must have exhausted all his blessings just to survive the trip. Soon, they reach the dragon and fly back home. On the way, the blonde companion asks Al whether he got to play with the toy he wanted. Al thinks of Scarlet and replies that he enjoyed playing with her far more than he ever expected and that he hopes to meet her again soon. Back in the kingdom, news of Scarlet stopping the slave auction spreads rapidly, and people everywhere begin calling her the savior of the nation. Reporters visit the Royal Academy to interview her friends about her hobbies and pets. While the girls speculate whether Scarlet might own a cute fluffy cat or a graceful dog, her newest pet turns out to be Rex, the dragon that Al left behind. As Scarlet trains the dragon, Nanika watches her from a distance with visible jealousy. Just then, her butler approaches and informs her that he has supplied all the town's merchants with the item she designed. He is unsure whether it will sell well due to its unusual nature, but Scarlet is confident that Julius alone will buy a large amount of it. The butler then points out that Nanika seems jealous of her new pet, and Scarlet calls him over to play with her as well. Nanika happily transforms into a puppy and runs toward her, but the maids arrive to take him away, explaining that they need his help preparing for the guests who will be arriving soon. Meanwhile, Taran goes to visit the prison, but the guards stop her at the entrance. She uses her magic to brainwash them, and they allow her to pass. As she walks inside, she reflects on how she wants the most adorable fairy tale ending imaginable. She dreams of falling in love with a prince and overcoming countless hardships together to reach her happy ending. Everything she does is for that outcome. Even now, she visits Godwin for the same reason. Godwin is pleased to see her and begs her to free him, promising to devote everything he has to serving the goddess Palm. Taran thanks him for suppressing other religions in the region and helping make communism the dominant religion of the country. Godwin insists that he can do even more if he is released. However, Taran says she has a gift for him from the goddess Palmina. She brainwashes him as well and leaves a bottle of poison on the floor. Completely under her control, Godwin drinks the poison, and Taran walks away, thanking him for playing his part in her story. As she no longer needs him, the news of Godwin's death reaches Julius and the others, but Julius finds it difficult to believe that someone as resilient as Godwin would take his own life. Leo is also suspicious, especially since they have uncovered nothing about Taran, even though Scarlet identified her as a major collaborator. At that moment, Nanika arrives carrying some old files that Leo had requested. As they review the documents, Julius becomes curious about the girl named Taran who managed to control even the Prime Minister. He suddenly notices a note about the religion known as communism, which causes Nanika to turn around. Julius explains that the kingdom contains several religions, and communism is one of the major ones. Leo adds that it only rose to prominence recently and has even been declared the official state religion. It worships Palina, the goddess of beauty and love, and is led by an arrogant merchant who is openly greedy. Nanika understands why this would connect to Godwin, as he was the type of man who would strike deals with every corrupt individual he encountered. Sigurd then brings up the topic of another major religion that has existed since the kingdom was founded. This is Dianism, which worships Saint Diana, a girl who possessed the power of exorcism. Leo explains that although Dianism is not the official religion, most people believe in it, and if asked, many commoners would say that Dianism deserves that status. This reminds Sigurd that the official pilgrimage festival of Dianism is approaching soon, and Julius leaves that matter to Leo, as he does not want to deal with it. Julius then suddenly brings up Scarlet and asks Leo how she is doing. Leo replies that she is doing very well and mentions that just the day before, she went out hunting food for her dragon. Julius laughs and comments that she is truly an extraordinary and one-of-a-kind woman. He begins thinking that he will never feel bored with Scarlet by his side and wonders whether he should seriously ask for her hand in marriage. Leo grins brightly and tells Julius to stop joking, since he has already exchanged vows with her. Nanika and Sigurd are shocked to hear this, and Leo explains that Julius and Scarlet have promised their lives to each other, though it is still a top secret. He continues boasting about how lucky his sister is, while Julius quietly hopes that Leo will eventually realize the truth on his own. In the meantime, Julius decides to pay a visit to the woman he loves. A few days later, Scarlet has fully tamed the dragon and rides perfectly on its back. Her friends from the academy come to visit her house, and just as they reach the gate, they see the dragon flying toward them. They do not notice Scarlet riding it and do not wait for the butler to explain that the dragon is harmless. Instead, they immediately attack it, and Scarlet somehow remains uninjured despite being struck. Later, while they are having tea, Scarlet learns that her friends assumed the dragon was an enemy. They proudly explain that they thought so because soldiers from the enemy kingdom ride dragons, and they instinctively tried to take one down as soon as they saw it. Scarlet is quietly pleased to see that her friends have not changed at all, especially since it has been so long since she last saw them. The girls begin arguing playfully about how they were the ones in charge of the girls' dorm while Scarlet was not around. After that, they tell Scarlet to recover quickly and come back to the academy, since graduation is drawing near and they do not want to graduate without her there. The girl with purple hair says that she hopes to graduate as soon as possible and then marry a decent man. Scarlet has heard that the girl already has many admirers, but the girl responds that none of them are truly sincere. She wants a man who would be willing to risk his life for her. While Scarlett is glad to hear about her dream, it reminds her of how Julius risked his own life to save her. She is unsure how she truly feels about that memory. Then her friends ask her whether she has any plans regarding marriage. Scarlett does not have an answer to that question, but she is spared from responding. As Nanika enters her room, she tells him that she is busy at the moment and that she will play with him later. However, Nanika explains that he did not come there to play. He says that he has brought a guest, and that guest turns out to be none other than Julius. The girls are stunned to see him there. When he greets them, they quickly stand up and nervously return his greeting. Julius asks whether he is interrupting them. Scarlett replies that he is disturbing her tea time with her friends, but the girls are more than willing to give up their tea time in exchange for spending time with the prince. Julius then asks if he may borrow Scarlett for a moment, and Scarlett dislikes the way he words it. Julius, unfazed by her reaction, walks toward her and takes her hand, saying that he would like to discuss something with her in private. The girls begin to swoon at the sight and tell Julius that he can borrow her for as long as he wants. Scarlett feels as betrayed as Caesar must have felt when Brutus stabbed him. With that, Julius leads Scarlett outside and asks whether she has heard that Godwin died while in custody. She confirms that she has, and Julius adds that he investigated Turan based on Scarlett's report, but Kyle knew nothing about her. They have no leads on her at all, so the investigation has come to a complete standstill. Scarlett finally realizes why Julius wanted to speak in private, since this was not something they could have discussed in front of her friends. Julius notices her expression and asks if she would rather talk about something else. Scarlett replies that there is nothing she wants to discuss and asks if he has anything more to say. Julius comments that her hair has not yet returned to normal, and she agrees, explaining that she plans to visit a hot spring soon to recover both mentally and physically. Julius tells her that this is a good idea, because she is an irreplaceable asset to the kingdom and should do whatever is necessary to remain in top condition. He says that he does not want to lose her over something trivial, and Scarlett replies that she feels the same way about him. Julius is caught off guard by her response, and Scarlett tells him never to do something as reckless as sacrificing himself for her sake. She says that she is grateful that the royal family values her blessings so highly, but if anything were to happen to the future king because of her, she would never be able to forgive herself. Julius suddenly stops her and asks whether he may pick the roses growing there, and she gives him permission. Julius begins plucking the roses while reminding Scarlett of the time they went to the market together. He says that long ago, his parents also disguised themselves as ordinary citizens to enjoy visiting the market. Scarlett is surprised to hear this, since they appear to be very serious people. Julius explains that they are only strict and serious on the outside, but in private they are quite romantic. He tells her that his father, the king, gave his mother countless gifts in an attempt to win her affection, but she eventually grew bored of them. However, there was one gift that made her heart flutter, and that was when she agreed to marry him. That gift was a crown made of rose flowers, crafted by his own hands. Now, Julius does the same thing. He places the rose crown on Scarlett's head and tells her that he needs her. He says that with her by his side, his world is vibrant and filled with beautiful things, but without her, it becomes dull and colorless. He then gently cups her face and says that she has stolen his heart, causing Scarlett's heart to skip a beat. Her knees grow weak as Julius leans closer and asks her to stay with him forever. Scarlett feels herself wanting to say yes. However, Julius then calls her his most beloved toy, and her mood immediately darkens. She asks whether he truly put love into making the rose crown, and he answers that he poured his love for his most entertaining toy into it. Scarlett is now furious, but Julius walks away without a second thought, saying that he did not realize she was so captivated by romantic fantasies, just like other girls her age. He adds that after seeing her beat nobles left and right, he almost forgot that she was human, and he never would have guessed that she wanted a romantic confession. Scarlett does not respond verbally. Instead, she puts on her knuckle gloves and asks Julius whether she has his permission to smash him. And that is where this video ends. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.